Imagine getting engaged to a prince and realizing the real challenge begins after the ring. Melody thought locking down his heart was the hard part, but stepping into his world, that's a whole different game. Because in a palace built on tradition, power, and very polished side-eyes, love alone doesn't carry the crown. Now she has to find her voice, claim her space, and remind everyone exactly who she is. Welcome back to Christmas in Old Towne Love Stories, where the romance is real, the pressure is higher, and happily ever after comes with terms and conditions. If you love bold women, royal tension, and a little attitude with your love stories, like, comment, subscribe. Now let's get into it. Melody McCormick, 31, the top event planner in the small but prosperous city of Petersburg, had imagined a lot of things in her life. None of them included stepping off a private jet into a royal kingdom with her entire family in tow. Her father, Mr. McCormick, usually stoic librarian, fumbled with his seatbelt, a rare grin spreading across his face. Mrs. McCormick, a school teacher, was already narrating everything like it was a PBS travel special, and her 21-year-old brother Maverick was scanning the runway like, "Okay, but where the princess is at?" Mel had one question. Why on earth had Soren invited her entire family? He'd been charmingly vague, citing a desire for them to experience Avalerian hospitality, but a knot of uncertainty persisted. They had come to Avaleria at the invitation of Prince Soren, the man who had, against all odds and royal expectations, captured Mel's heart. He'd met her in Petersburg, Virginia, during a U.S. tour at Christmas time, and what began as a professional relationship. Mel was planning his royal Christmas ball, had blossomed into an undeniable, deeply personal connection. Now that connection had brought her, and her very American family, to the doorstep of European royalty. The cabin door opened and a rush of cool air swept inside, crisp, clean, unfamiliar. Mel stepped forward and stopped. A red carpet, not symbolic, an actual red carpet. Maverick touched it with a laugh. "What is this velvet?" Mel shook her head. "Okay, this red carpet is doing the most," she muttered. "Stand up straight," her mother whispered sharply. "I am standing up straight. Stand up royal straight." And then the trumpet started at the welcome line. Mel blinked. Oh, they're serious. At the end of the carpet stood Soren, 34, still, composed, fine, so fine, face card unbeatable, and completely unaffected by the spectacle around him and looking directly at her. Not the crowd, not the ceremony, her and somehow everything else quieted. Heat crept up her neck. It had been a month since she last seen him, since they toured Africa together. He winked at her, and she smiled. She looked around and noticed that the palace staff were immaculate, posture perfect. Expressions controlled. They reminded her of Ingrid, Prince Soren's executive secretary and event planner, who had traveled to Virginia with him when she first met him. But unlike what her relationship with Ingrid had grown to be, none of these people seemed warm. Polite, yes, but not warm. This wasn't rudeness. They were assessing her. Prince Soren grabbed her in front of the entire crowd and kissed her like his life depended on it. At first, Mel was embarrassed, but the more he kissed her, the more she forgot that a small crowd was circled around them. His hands slid down her back while hers lifted up, running through her curls. If it wasn't for Captain Thorne, the head of security, clearing his throat, their reunion embrace may have gone on until the wee hours. Mel's face reddened, but then she said, "You remember my folks, right?" He shook their hands. "And me," yelled a voice in the back. Of course, it was Maverick as he dapped up Soren. "My guy," he cheesed. Mel's parents had been introduced to Soren before their worldwide trip, but she had yet to meet his. That would come later. As Soren introduced her family to the main staff, Mel's father shook hands like he was closing a deal. Her mother smiled like she was representing the entire United States. Her brother, "So, anybody need a cut? I'll charge half price." Mel elbowed him. Too late. Musa, one of Soren's personal security guards, almost laughed. Small win, they'd take it. Ingrid appeared at Mel's side, calm and precise. "Curtsy, controlled, not too deep. So don't fall. Preferably, you're about to meet Soren's parents, the King Askell and Queen Bolonli." Mel stepped forward. She showed Ingrid her curtsy. It wasn't perfect, wasn't terrible. We'll call it survivable. They walked in to meet the rulers, taking in the renovated castle, space by space. The room itself wasn't a throne room, nothing that obvious. It was a private receiving chamber. Modern, intentional. Tall windows let in cool daylight, softened by sheer drapery. Clean architectural lines balanced out centuries-old stone walls. Portraits of past monarchs watched quietly from a distance, less intimidating than expected, but not exactly comforting either. Power lived here. It just didn't need to announce itself. The king stood near a low, polished table, hands loosely clasped behind his back. Tailored suit, minimal ceremony. The kind of presence that didn't raise its voice because it didn't have to. He gave a single nod, polite, measured, reserved. The queen stood just slightly apart, elegant, controlled. Effortless in a way that suggested this wasn't performance, it was default. She smiled, technically, but her eyes were measuring, calculating, taking in everything Mel hadn't agreed to present. Not cruel, but not warm either. Mel returned the smile, because what else do you do when someone is silently reviewing your entire existence? "Welcome to Avaleria," the queen said, smooth, even, then just a slight pause, almost unnoticeable. "I trust your accommodations will be suitable." A long pause for your short visit. The king patted Soren on his shoulder. "See you at dinner," held out his arm for the queen. She latched onto his, and they both walked out with a small team running behind. Mel looked at her parents and exhaled. That evening, Mel went through her luggage looking for something appropriate to wear. Her mother watched her closely. "Mel, love, you look good in everything." Mel smiled, pretending to accept the compliment, but the truth was she hadn't. She wanted to make a good impression with the king and queen, and this would be her opportunity. She went with her safe option. The LBD, the dining hall, was breathtaking. Crystal caught the light from every angle. Candles flickered like they had something to prove. Courses arrived in perfect sequence, each one more elaborate than the last. Forks, glasses, timing, outside in. Sip, don't drink, pace yourself. Mel, the established event planner, was able to keep up. After all, her mother taught her well, plus she was a debutante. But her dad and brother struggled a bit, asking her with their eyes. "A little help here." The prince sat beside his mother, and diagonal from his father, a little further from Mel. He leaned over the table and gave her a wink. She giggled. Mel did her best to engage, perform, and laugh with the Avalerian dignitaries seated at the table. And then she felt it. The looks, not obvious, never obvious. A glance that lingered a second too long. A whisper behind a glass. A smile that faded just slightly too soon. If you weren't paying attention, you'd miss it. Mel didn't. Across the table, a woman dressed in a gown that looked like it cost more than her city's budget scanned her from head to toe, then looked away. Mel thought she heard her whisper. "So basic." Message delivered. "I didn't even do anything," she thought, and somehow that felt like the problem. She needed to get away. Outside in the gardens, the air felt different, quieter, real. Mel found a place to rest. She said a prayer for strength. Soren found her like he always did. "You disappeared." "I needed air." He studied her not casually, carefully. "Talk to me." She almost did, almost told him everything, but instead, "I'm okay." He didn't fully believe her, but he didn't push, not yet. Instead, he took her hand, lifted it, kissed it, then held it briefly against his chest, warm, steady. "It's a lot," he said softly. "The first time." She let out a quiet breath. "You did well." That sounded like a performance review. A small smile. "High marks. What do you say in the States, all A's?" She laughed just a little. This was the version of him she held onto. Not the prince, just Soren. They walked slowly, unhurried. "You don't see stars like this anywhere else," he said. "No," she replied. "Most places have streetlights and bad decisions." He laughed, but this time he didn't step away. There was a pause, not awkward, just full. His hand found hers again, gentler this time, intentional. "Mel," he said quietly. She looked up, and that was all it took. He pulled her closely to him and leaned in. Slow at first, giving her time to meet him there, and she did. The kiss wasn't polite, wasn't careful. And unlike the Avalerians, it was warm, and a little bit overdue. Her hand moved instinctively, resting against his chest, feeling the steady rhythm beneath her palm. He pulled her even closer, just enough to erase any space between them. For a moment there was no palace, no expectations, no watching eyes, just him, just her. When they finally pulled back, it wasn't abrupt, just reluctant. "You're allowed to feel all of this," he murmured. Mel exhaled softly, grounded now. In a place designed to make her feel small, he was the only thing that didn't. "Hey, loves. Woo, how do you think is going, and where is it going? Prince Soren, he's our guy, but what about these royal folks? Write a comment and let us know what you're feeling about the situation. Okay, let's get back to Mel. Our girl needs us." The next afternoon, Soren led her to a secluded stretch of lawn just beyond the castle. Private, quiet, overlooking everything without being seen. He'd insisted on packing the picnic himself. a charmingly clumsy decision that resulted in slightly squashed sandwiches and a bottle of surprisingly good local cider. Mel smiled, settling into the blanket. For once, there was no schedule, no pressure, just them. She exhaled and let herself enjoy it. They talked the way people do when time isn't chasing them. About everything, about nothing. He spoke about Avaleria, his hopes for it. Not just preserving tradition, but evolving it. Bridging the gap between what it was and what it could be. She told him about her dreams, building her own event-planning empire, creating moments that people would never forget. The quiet satisfaction of getting every detail exactly right. With him, it all felt possible. Simple, clear, and then something shifted, not dramatically, just enough. He reached into his pocket. Mel's breath stopped. He signaled someone she could not see at first. It was Musa and Ibrahim, his top bodyguards. They were standing off at a distance. Soren stood, then moved in front of her. Not rushed, not rehearsed. He knelt, right there in the grass, wind catching slightly in his jacket. No spectacle, no audience, just her. "I've been in love with you," he said, his voice softer now, "since the day you laughed at me for asking where the mac and cheese was at that Michelin-level dinner." Mel laughed, half because it was funny, half because it was the only thing keeping her from completely falling apart. He smiled, just briefly, then steadied. "You walked into my life like it wasn't going to change anything," he continued. "And somehow you changed everything." His gaze held hers, unshaken, certain. "You see me, not the title, not the expectations, just me," a pause. "And I've never wanted anything more than to build a life with you. Not just as a princess. As my partner, my equal, my home." He opened a small decorative box. The ring caught the light instantly. Large, brilliant, impossible to ignore. But Mel wasn't looking at the ring, she was looking at him. "Melody McCormick." His voice softened just slightly. "Will you marry me?" Tears filled her eyes before she could stop them. "Yes," she whispered, then stronger, "yes." He slid the ring onto her finger, perfect fit. "How did you know?" she asked, wiping away her tears. He winked. "Now you know I know your size." She giggled, and just like that, everything changed. A soft rustle broke the moment. They both turned. Musa and Ibrahim stepped out of the way to reveal her family behind the trees. They stepped out, beaming, her mother already crying, her father trying and failing to hold it together, her brother grinning like he'd just witnessed the greatest moment of his life. Behind them, Ingrid stood composed, satisfied. Edward just beside her, doing a very poor job of hiding his excitement. Mel let out a surprised laugh as her family rushed forward. Her mother wrapped her in a tight embrace. Her father shook Soren's hand with genuine warmth. Her brother threw in an enthusiastic, slightly chaotic hug for both of them. For a moment, nothing else existed. Not the pressure, not the expectations, not the feeling of being out of place. Just love. Edward leaned slightly toward Soren, lowering his voice. "Excellent decision, sir," he murmured. "Particularly the choice not to propose while jumping out of a helicopter." Soren exhaled a quiet laugh. "I know that's what Ingrid asked me to do, but sometimes," he said, glancing at Mel, "simple is better." Edward nodded. "But sir, when were you planning on telling the king and queen?" Soren pointed at his parents, who had walked down to see what was happening. "Edward, I just did." "Hey, loves, was that the best way for Prince Soren to let his parents know? What do you think will happen? Will they accept our girl, Mel?" Write your opinions in the comments, and please let us know where you're listening from. Don't forget to subscribe. You don't want to miss any of the love stories that we have planned for you. Now, let's get back to the royal drama. As they walked into the castle after celebrating on the lawn, laughter carried its way inside. Just beyond them, unnoticed, the staff stood at a distance, watching, silent, measured, and not entirely pleased. Next week was led by engagement celebrations. The king wanted to stop it, but the queen said to let Soren have his fun, figuring the couple would most likely implode in due time. Mel's parents had a great time but had to get back home. They waved as they boarded the jet. Mel felt at the moment the jet disappeared into the clouds, like something had shifted quietly but completely. The warmth her family brought with them, the laughter, the familiarity, the grounding left with them, and in its place. Something colder settled into the palace walls. While they'd been there, everything had felt sorta polished. Welcoming even, but now, the smiles were tighter, more rehearsed, the kindness thinner. It wasn't anything obvious at first. Nothing you could point to and say, there it is, just a feeling. A subtle hum beneath everything, like she was no longer being hosted. The shift showed up in small ways. A maid adjusting Mel's vanity, pausing just long enough to murmur as Mel applied her lipstick. "That shade might not be royal enough." A chef, polite but pointed. Are you certain you prefer your eggs be prepared this way like a commoner? Always gentle, always smiling, but never quite kind. Drip by drip it wore on her, not enough to confront, just enough to make her question herself. And then there was the wardrobe. Mel loved her comfy clothes, her soft blouses, her perfectly fitted denim, her luxe sweats, easy, polished comfort. Back home, she was put together. She was a top event planner for Pete's sake, but here she felt unfinished. The women of the court floated through the halls in couture that looked like it had been stitched onto them, every detail intentional, every look a statement, and every time Mel passed them she felt it. The glances, quick, appraising, gone just as fast, but not before it landed. She became hyper-aware of every thread, every hemline, every choice, like she was constantly almost getting it right, but not quite. Even the king and queen had changed, for the worse. The warmth they once slightly performed was gone now. "Tell us again," the king would say, "your understanding of Avalerian trade history. After all, our son has proposed to you without our knowledge, and if you are to become our daughter-in-law, you'll need to understand what it means to be a royal." And the queen, she didn't ask much at all. She just watched, eyes sharp. Mel felt that every conversation felt like a test, because that's what it was. Almost without realizing it, Mel started to shrink. Mel didn't just feel out of place. She felt alone. And she was wondering, even though she loved Soren with her whole entire heart, if she should even get married to a prince. It was mid-December and finally time for Mel's Bachelorette getaway, an opportunity to escape the scrutiny and a chance to let hair down, or rather, let those curls go free. But of course, Rosie and Ingrid volunteered to plan the Bachelorette weekend. And they did not agree on what balanced meant. Rosie, 23, had ideas, fun, intimate, and thoughtful. But Ingrid had a grand vision. And Rosie, still just a little intimidated by Ingrid and her sharp bob, acquiesced, allowing Ingrid's vision to lead. Ingrid went all in. Private villas overlooking the water, multiple yachts as in plural, designer gift bags curated like museum exhibits, and a 4-day itinerary organized with the precision of an international summit. When the gift bags were finally presented, even Mel had to pause. Inside, everything was perfectly arranged, intentional, elevated, and beyond expensive. Chanel ballerina flats for daytime wandering, Herbert Levine thong sandals for the villa and yacht, a Louis V Speedy soft bag for each of them with the plan that it would sit effortlessly on top of their luggage. And the final touch, soft, feminine, beautifully detailed pajamas from Exude Sleepwear, a black woman-owned luxury brand. Rosie picked up one of the bags, casually at first. Then she checked the tag, paused, looked again. $4,000, sheesh, she whispered. Then Rosie leaned closer to Mel. Each. Mel shook her head. "I didn't ask for any of this." "I know you didn't," Rosie said, still staring at the bag. Across the room, Ingrid glanced over. "I know, I should have gotten the large suitcases, but it's the best I could do locally." Mel and Rosie just blinked. There was a long pause, but then Rosie cracked her knuckles. "I can get used to this." On the day of the Bachelorette party, Mel, Ingrid, and Rosie had flown to the hidden island. After relaxing for a bit, Mel got a text that simply said, "We made it." About an hour later, Maeve and Brianna had arrived. Maeve nodded slowly. "Oh, this is rich, rich." Brianna leaned in. "Like, don't ask questions, just accept the lifestyle, rich." Maeve laughed. "Oh, be quiet with your billionaire hubby." Brianna pushed her softly. "And your K-pop opa." Both women quietly giggled. Loves, if you don't know their love stories, please check out episodes 1 and 2 linked in the description. They'll be sure to make you giggle and blush, too. Okay, but let's get back to Mel and this Bachelorette party. Mel stood beside Rosie and Ingrid at the entrance of the main villa. She was surprised to see Maeve and Brianna walking towards them from a distance. Both worked for the mayor and had to do some major fun-a-galing to take the week off. "The girls are here," Rosie exclaimed. Ingrid winked. "We sent the jet." Maeve smiled. "Thanks. And the mayor sends her love." As everyone hugged, Ingrid, professional, polished, and stiff as ever, shook their hands. She then spoke directly to the porters carrying bags. "Please follow us." As the group walked further inside, a loud, screechy, unfiltered voice yelled from behind. "Tell me why this looks like a movie." Brianna looked back at the beautiful woman but unfiltered woman running towards them, braids, hoops, and purse swinging in the wind. "Who is that?" asked Brianna. Maeve laughed. "Mimi, Mel's cousin. She's a little unpredictable." "Melody," Mimi screamed with unconfined joy. She ran in loud, joyful, and completely uncontained. Mel barely had time to brace before she was pulled into a hug that almost knocked the balance out of her. And just like that, chaos. Mimi spun in a full circle, taking everything in. The water, the villas, the staff. I'm not going to know how to act, she declared. She grabbed one of the gift bags, opened it, paused, looked up in the sky. Thank you, Lord Jesus. Everyone also to whom God has given wealth and possessions and power to enjoy them. This is the gift of God. Maeve leaned over to Brianna. She can quote a scripture when applicable like nobody's business. Brianna laughed. Ingrid watched Mimi now inspecting the stitching on the purse like it was a crime scene. Yes, this is real. I'm going to need another suitcase. Ingrid's eyes almost popped out of her head. The night unfolded exactly how it needed to. Loud, bright. And thanks to Mimi, a little ridiculous. Later, the noise softened. While Rosie and Ingrid spoke to the staff about dinner prep, Mimi was busy taking selfies with her new bag and accessories. Hashtag my life is better than yours. Mel, Brianna, and Maeve all sat side by side, laying down, Chanel flats off, the air cooler now as the ocean stretched out in front of them, quiet and steady. For a moment, none of them spoke. Then Maeve glanced at Mel. She asked, "How is everything going?" Mel sighed, contemplating how to answer this before admitting, "Those royal folks don't approve of me." Both Maeve and Brianna sat up in their chair. "Don't approve," said Brianna. Maeve shook her head. "I know how it is to be new in a family, to be different. When Tay and I got married, his family accepted me with open arms, but many of his K-pop and K-drama fans protested. They couldn't understand why he married me. He received negative press." Mel lifted an eyebrow. "What did you do?" Maeve smiled. "I wasn't sure what to do at first, but Tay had kindly taken over. He defended me in public, even bringing me on stage while on tour." Maeve said, "Oh, I saw that kiss on TikTok." Brianna laughed. "He did that in front of everyone." Maeve said, "Yup, Tay don't play about me, and from the way the prince kissed Mel when she got here, he don't play about her either." They all laughed. Brianna turned to Mel. "You're going to be all right." "I mean, think about this, I'm married to a billionaire. His folks were expecting Grant to explain us, but if you know Grant, that man feels he owes 0 explainers." Mel laughed again. It was just what the doctor ordered. Moments later, Rosie, Ingrid, and Mimi joined them. Ingrid asked, "Are you ladies ready to eat dinner?" Mimi jumped in Ingrid's face, too enthusiastically. "After that 15-hour flight, you'll better feed me." Rosie laughed, "Está loca," under her breath, then she quickly regained her composure. "Come on, guys, it's time to celebrate my beautiful boss," Maeve clapped. "The best wedding planner in Petersburg, no the best in the world, now has her own wedding to plan." Mel stood up and exhaled. Slow, steady. It was her time. It was her wedding. Why was she stressed? This was a time for happiness and gratitude. The girls spent the week completely pampered, wrapped in luxury, dripping in style, and dancing their way through unforgettable parties, with Mimi leading the charge as the loud, hilarious heartbeat of it all. When it finally came to an end, Mimi, Maeve, and Rosie flew back to the U.S., while Ingrid and Mel returned to the palace, carrying the glow of it all with them. And for the first time since arriving in Avaleria, she felt like herself again. But this emotion would be short-lived. Soren was the first to greet her, pulling her into a warm, open-armed hug that instantly made the long journey home melt away. That night, they wrapped themselves in a blanket beneath the stars, the quiet between them as comforting as his touch. He casually mentioned tomorrow's plans. "We'll need to attend an elevated tea party." Mel raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean by elevated?" "About 400 people," she laughed. "That sounds more like the Boston Tea Party." Soren chuckled, but Mel's smile softened as reality crept in. "I don't even know if I have anything to wear. This feels like floral gowns, hats, expectations." He gently cupped her face, drawing her closer. "You look good in everything. You're the baddest here," he murmured before kissing her. Mel laughed against his lips, but deep down, she knew that might only be true in his eyes. Everyone else would have opinions, and somehow she'd have to rise to meet them. The following afternoon, the lavish tea party unfolded as a breathtaking display of royal elegance, where couture fashion, refined tradition, and high society prestige came together for a glittering event. Vivienne entered like an announcement no one asked for. Perfectly styled, perfectly timed, perfectly aware. Her friends hovered at her sides like accessories. She spotted Mel instantly, smiled, sharp. She couldn't resist. Vivienne glided over, finding Mel standing beside Ingrid. "Oh, how charming," she said lightly. "The event planner is still playing at royalty. What happened to standards?" Mel almost responded. Almost, but Ingrid stepped forward first. Calm, precise. "Unbothered, Lady Vivienne, it's interesting how confidently you speak about standards." A slight pause. "When it wasn't long ago that you couldn't meet any yourself." Silence. The clap back landed exactly as intended. A flicker of recognition, of memory, of humiliation. Vivienne's failed attempt to seduce Prince Soren in Virginia, the trespassing, the night in jail, the quiet bailout. Her friends shifted, suddenly unsure where to look. "Excuse me," Vivienne snapped. Ingrid tilted her head slightly. "I said what I said." Vivienne turned to Mel now, grasping for control. "You must find all of this very overwhelming," she sneered. Soft giggle from one of her friends as she looked Mel up and down. Mel met her gaze. "Honestly," she said calmly, "no, I find this to be sad." That one lingered. Then Musa and Ibrahim approached, low voices murmuring into their earpieces. "Sir, I don't know how she got in." "Yes, sir, understood." The two bodyguards looked at each other, and then Musa stepped forward. "Lady Vivienne, please come with us." He reached gently for her arm. Vivienne recoiled. "Don't you touch me." A sharp breath. "Barbarians," she hissed. Ingrid shook her head. Ibrahim did not suffer fools, so he didn't hesitate to escort Vivienne out. The dismissal was so absolute, so public, that Vivienne visibly recoiled. Her face, usually a mask of flawless composure, flickered with mortification. She shot Melody a venomous glare, a silent promise of future retribution, before turning abruptly and sweeping away into the crowd, her nasty attitude a stark slash of defiance against the opulent backdrop. Vivienne's friends melted into the crowd, traitorous, acting as if they did not know her. Mel lowered her gaze for just a moment, then lifted it again. Composed, untouched. Soren rushed to her side, concern written all over him, but she brushed it off with a small smile as if nothing had happened. As if she hadn't just held her ground in a room designed to break her. But across the room, the Queen had been watching. Something stirred. A memory. She exhaled softly, then glanced toward the king, resting a gentle hand on his arm. He leaned in, pressing a quick kiss to her lips. A knowing nod passed between them. She summoned an attendant. A few minutes later, the Queen called Mel into a private area in the garden. "Hey, loves, what does the Queen need with Mel? What do you think she wants to say? It's getting good." Be sure to subscribe if you haven't done that already and smash the notification bell so you'll know when the next story is coming out. Okay, let's get back to this one. A few minutes later, Mel was led into a quiet corner of the garden. No audience, no ceremony, just truth. Mel curtsied. "Your Majesty, you wanted to see me." Queen Bolonli studied her for a moment, then gave a small, knowing smile. "I did not arrive here as a bride," she said evenly. "I arrived as a decision that had already been made for me." A beat. "Sit, child." Mel gathered her dress and sat. The Queen's gaze drifted briefly to Mel's ring, brilliant, symbolic, before returning to her face. Marriage was arranged, not love like you and Soren. It was a transaction, two powerful families securing their future. Her voice softened but never weakened. "I was the eldest daughter, it was my duty." A quiet exhale. "I was terrified, and Askell," she paused faintly. "The king." "It's not kind, I was not the bride he imagined." Her gaze shifted, distant now. "We lived in the same palace, but not in the same life. Separate rooms, separate silences. We spoke only when required." She paused. There was judgment, isolation, and a quiet expectation that I would disappear into the role. She looked back at Mel. "I thought if I became smaller, I would finally belong." Another pause. "But shrinking does not create belonging." Her voice sharpened just slightly. "It creates absence." Leaned in, hanging on every word. "There was a turning point," the Queen continued. "A council meeting." A faint smile, this time edged with memory. "I shared an idea privately with an aide, a way to expand Avaleria's global reach. It was dismissed, and the next day that man repeated my idea, and he was praised for it." Silence. "I watched it happen." Her gaze hardened, not with anger, but with clarity. "And that day I chose not to disappear." A breath. "I stood, not emotional, not pleading." Another beat. "Certain." She met Mel's eyes. "I stood up for myself and everything changed." A softness returned now. "For the first time, the king saw me, not as an obligation, not as a mistake." A quiet smile. "But as his equal." She leaned slightly closer, "And he hasn't been able to keep his hands off me since." She laughed. "My dear, you must see yourself as who you truly are." A pause. "We have not made this easy for you because a future queen cannot be fragile in rooms like that." Her voice gentled. "But she can be steady." A beat. "Show me that strength." Softer now. "I know it's in you. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid." But then Mel interrupting by finishing with, "For the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go." The Queen smiled. "I see you know it. Yes, Joshua 1:9. Mel's eyes filled before she could stop them. And then, without thinking, without protocol, she moved forward and wrapped her arms around the Queen. The queen stilled, just for a moment. Then slowly she returned the embrace, holding her, grounding her. "You will do well," she whispered. When Mel returned to the palace, something had shifted, not louder, not harder, clearer. The palace hadn't changed. The pressure was still there, subtle judgment, polite distance, quiet exclusion. But she wasn't absorbing it the same way anymore. At a formal dinner event, it happened again. Mel stood in conversation with a visiting dignitary, effortlessly weaving in details about Avaleria's history, current affairs, and protocol for formal events, knowledge she had studied long before she ever arrived. A passing guest smiled at her. Pleasant, practiced. "That's quite interesting," he said, showing teeth. "Speaking so confidently on Avaleria for someone so new here." A soft laugh followed. Mel felt it, that familiar tightening, the instinct to soften it, to let it pass. But this time she didn't. Her gaze lifted, steady. "I understand many things," she said evenly, a beat. "Starting with the fact that I wasn't speaking to you." The air shifted. Before the man could recover, Prince Soren stepped in, calm, controlled, final. "She is not new to understanding anything," he said. "My future wife is brilliant. Why else would I be marrying her?" A pause, sharp. "And if you have an issue with her intellect, I have no problem personally escorting you out." Behind him, Musa and Ibrahim stepped forward, slightly, silent but unmistakable. The guest's face flushed deep red. "My apologies, Your Highness, I meant no offense." Soren didn't respond. He simply turned his back. "My love," he said softly. "A word." He led her into a quiet side room, away from the noise, his arms wrapped around her waist, grounding her. "Have people been mistreating you?" he asked, voice low. Mel exhaled, then nodded. "Don't worry," she said gently. "As the kids say, your mother got me together." A small smile. "I won't be quiet about disrespect anymore." Soren took her hands, his expression softening. "Why didn't you tell me?" Mel met his hazel eyes. "Because I didn't want to be a burden." His grip tightened just slightly. "You're not a burden, you're my partner," he said. And when he kissed her this time, Mel felt it fully, not just affection, not just attraction, but certainty. He loved her, completely. In the days that followed, Mel stopped shrinking. She spoke, she reframed. She challenged when necessary, not to fight the system, but to exist fully within it. Their Christmas wedding in Avaleria wasn't just a day. It unfolded like a season. 2 full weeks where the entire country leaned into celebration, where streets, palaces, and people moved in rhythm with something larger than tradition. It didn't just feel grand. It redefined it. Ingrid and Captain Thorne, with Rosie at the center of it all, executed every detail with precision sharp enough to impress, and just enough flair to make it unforgettable. Nothing was accidental. Everything was intentional. On their wedding day, Soren had surprised Mel by flying in Miss Evie, the owner of her favorite boutique in Old Town Petersburg. The king had given them special permission for another surprise. Mel hadn't expected the room to feel sacred. Miss Evie stood near the center, gloved hands folded, posture impeccable. A long garment bag rested behind her, flanked by 2 assistants who looked like they had been personally warned not to breathe too hard. She unzipped the bag with care. Layer by layer, the fabric was revealed. Ivory, but not the kind you find. The kind that ages. Hand-woven silk, impossibly delicate, threaded with faint patterns that only revealed themselves when the light caught just right. The bodice was structured, regal, detailed with embroidery so fine it felt almost whispered into the fabric. Mel held her breath. "What is that?" Miss Evie didn't answer immediately. She stepped closer to the gown, adjusting it with quiet precision. "This," she said at last, "was worn by a royal ancestor of the king, nearly 2 centuries ago." A pause. "His 6 times great-grandmother." Mel's eyes widened slightly. "The original design," Miss Evie continued, "was expected for its time, restrictive, decorative, meant to be admired more than lived in." She turned back to Mel now. "That honey bunny," she said calmly, "will not be your experience." Mel stepped closer, almost afraid to touch it. "You redesigned it." "I restored it," she corrected, "and then elevated it. You're going to eat those girls up." Mel's eyes filled with tears. "Well, you've been studying Avalerian history." "Heck, you're about to make history. Your prince thought it was fitting." Mel laughed. "Such favor, I'm looking like Bridgerton." Both women laughed, and the queen smiled to herself, observing discreetly from the doorway. A few doors down, King Askel stood before Soren, adjusting his bow tie with quiet precision. For a moment he said nothing, just looked at him, proud, certain. "A crown is never carried alone, my son," he said at last. "It is shared with the person brave enough to stand beside it." A small pause. You've made a remarkable choice for our nation and for our family. Soren exhaled, emotion flickering just beneath the surface. The queen entered then, her presence steady as ever. She took one look at Soren and gave a subtle nod of approval. No notes. Soren smiled and pulled them both into a hug, something easy, something real. Edward stood off to the side, absolutely beaming, like a man who had been waiting his whole life for this exact moment. Behind him, Musa and Ibrahim stood tall. Unshakable, immovable, silent, a beat. Then Musa discreetly pulled out a handkerchief. Ibrahim glanced at him, paused, reached into his own jacket and produced a slightly larger one. They both dabbed at their eyes with great seriousness, completely committed to pretending it wasn't happening. Edward caught it, shook his head with a quiet laugh. "Gentlemen," he muttered, "we're still on duty." Musa cleared his throat. "Yes, sir." Ibrahim straightened. "Of course, sir." A beat. Musa leaned slightly toward him. "My guy, it's allergies." Ibrahim nodded. "Severe." Soren glanced back at these mountains of men, catching just enough of the situation to shake his head, then laugh. And just like that, the room held everything at once. Legacy, love, and a future that finally felt right. Outside, everyone had gathered. Celebrities, ambassadors, jet-setters, power players from every corner of the world. The kind of guest list that didn't just make headlines, it dominated them. Mel's people showed up, too. Her family was there, with her brother volunteering to cut the groomsman's hair. "You can tip me in royal coins on Cash App," he said as the line grew out the door. The mayor of Petersburg and her circle arrived like they always did, bold, unfiltered, and completely themselves. Brianna and Grant, effortless, polished, impossible to ignore. Madina and Minjay, cool, composed, moving in quiet sync with one another. Janice and Rowan, documenting everything naturally. The mayor, still saying exactly what she wanted, exactly when she wanted. Maeve and Tay arrived with their toddler son in tow, equal parts chaos and cuteness, completely oblivious to the magnitude of this event. If you don't know who Tay Kim is or who any of the handsome husbands are, please check out episodes 1 through 6. Those stories are sure to make you swoon. Okay, let's get back to our girl Mel's big day. The decor was breathtaking. Giant-sized Christmas trees, garlands, candles, and floral displays that would make any parade float envious filled the castle. The guests were seated. The music began. The doors opened. Everything softened. The music, the movement, the room itself seemed to pause. Mel stepped forward. For a brief second, the weight of it all, history, expectation, legacy, pressed in. Then she remembered. She wasn't walking into this to become someone else. She was walking in as herself, and that changed everything. The gown moved with her, light catching the quiet details, history trailing behind her without holding her back. A breath. Another step, her father anchored at her side. At the end of the aisle, Soren, still, waiting, completely undone by the sight of her. Mel smiled. Not perfectly, not cautiously, but fully. And as she continued toward him, steady and certain, no doubt just love, clear, chosen, unshakable, the audience cheered as loudly as they could as the two kissed. It was a wedding for the history books. Rosie was everywhere, running point, managing moments, holding the entire production together with instinct and precision. But somewhere between planning meetings and late-night revisions, something else had taken shape. Edward. No longer just the prince's top assistant. No longer standing at a distance. He was beside her now, consistently, intentionally. A quiet partnership turning into something neither of them rushed, but neither of them ignored. Later that evening, just beyond the glow of the reception, the garden offered something rare, quiet. The music softened in the distance. Laughter carried on the air. But here it was still. Rosie exhaled, slipping off her heels and holding them in one hand as she walked along the stone path. "For the record," she muttered, "if anyone ever says wedding planning is glamorous, they're lying." "Noted." Edward's voice came from behind her. She didn't turn right away, just smiled. "You've been following me all night," she said, finally glancing over her shoulder. "I've been monitoring the situation *," he replied smoothly. Rosie laughed. "Oh, is that what we're calling it?" He stepped closer now, loosening his tie just slightly. "It's a high-level operation," he said. "Very complex." A beat, then softer. "You did good today, Rosie." She looked at him fully now. Yeah. A pause settled between them, not awkward, just honest. "You know," she said, shifting her shoes to the other hand, "somewhere between the seating charts and the near disaster with the floral arch." Edward raised an eyebrow. "Near disaster. Don't ruin my moment." He nodded. "Understood, continue." She smiled. "I realized I stopped doing this alone." Another beat. His voice softened. "You weren't meant to do it alone." He was right. Rosie looked down for a second, then back up at him. You know what, she said, a hint of teasing returning. Us assistants need to stick together. We're like a planning club. Something about hearing this friend-zone-level conversation made Edward realize that it was time to take action. Edward took a small step closer, then reached for her hand instead, gentle, certain. I'd only be in that type of club if it's just you and I, because trust love, I don't want to be just friends, he said. Her breath stopped just a little, and for once. Rosie, who always had the next move planned, hadn't predicted this. Edward was hot, tall, fit, and 26. Rosie thought now is not the time to discuss meetup groups. She let the moment happen, no overthinking, no scheduling. Just a quiet spark began between them, no declaration, just recognition. And then he kissed her, not rushed. Rosie stilled for half a second, then melted into it. Her hand tightened slightly in his. His other hand found her waist. When they finally pulled back, it wasn't far, both of them smiling just a little. Well, Rosie said softly, catching her breath, that was not in the original plan. Edward smiled. Best adjustment we made all week. She laughed, quiet, real, and this time neither of them pretended it was just work anymore. When they returned inside, Kim reunited with his former K-pop bandmates. They were dancing on the stage. Maeve was bouncing their son on her knees to the beat. Ingrid blinked once, twice, and nearly passed out as their #1 fan. I can't handle all of this sexy, she muttered under her breath, eyes wide. Mimi had eluded security and was dancing on Tay's bandmate Juwon, who didn't seem to mind, matching her energy hip roll for hip roll. Princess Mel, standing beside her husband Prince Soren, laughed so hard that she could barely contain her amusement. She was not shrinking, no longer proving, just living and loving in absolutely every way possible. This has been Christmas in Old Towne, where ambitious women, unexpected love, and the holiday spirit collide. Please subscribe, like, comment, and share. Hit the notification bell and fall in love with our stories. More romances are coming right here in Petersburg. The more people subscribe, the more love stories we can tell. Join our Patreon for exclusive behind-the-scenes access as we bring our actual Christmas romantic comedy to life. You'll find all of the information in the description. The more you support, the more love stories we get to tell. And if you're new here, you've got some catching up to do. In Petersburg, the mayor's inner circle is full of brilliant, dynamic women, and each of them finds love at Christmas. Be blessed and have a very merry everything.